GETTYThe UK has warned that its fighters are heading over to mount a series of Christmas attacks. The warning, from Turkish intelligence offices, follows concerns that the head of IS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, escaped Raqqa with thousands of armed extremist fighters, including many British jihadis, in a secret peace deal 5 weeks ago. Last night a British military source who attended the briefing said it left no room for doubt. Their Turkish intelligence service briefed that IS have been smuggled into Turkey in numbers and are heading to Europe and the UK. He said, "The threat level is very high and it is evident the Turkish authorities have detained a number of people and are confident the information is accurate." On Thursday, Security Minister Ben Wallace confirmed IS continued to pose a grave threat to Britain. Middle East Minister Alistair Burt added, "We know that Daesh will continue to pose a threat in the region. We also know that the battle of ideas is far from won. Daesh is still capable of inspiring people to carry out attacks in its name and, as such, it remains a serious global threat. We have seen tragic evidence of this on the continent, in the US and here in the UK. Al-Bagadi is one of a number of senior leaders who escaped Raqqa as Kurdish fighters, backed by coalition forces, closed in to finish off IS fighters at the city's hospital. It happened after the extremists seized more than 200 women and children, using them as human shields. Many were forced to carry landmines and bombs into the street," sources said, with jihadists warning they were willing to kill hundreds before fighting to the death. "The fact is there were very few options: carry on fighting and risk killing hundreds of civilians, send in Western forces to support exhausted Kurdish fighters, or allow them to drive away and monitor them." British military source depleted after weeks of hard fighting. Exhausted Kurdish fighters reported to coalition commanders that they did not have the resources to tackle the remaining IS cadre. A move to save lives, Kurdish commanders and tribal elders struck a deal to offer free passage. Communicating by mobile phone, they agreed to allow the extremists to drive out in trucks and buses to a spot in the Syrian desert. U.S. coalition commanders were informed of the proposed deal on October 13. The deal was approved 24 hours later by coalition leader Lieutenant General Paul Funk. More than 4,000 IS fighters, still carrying weapons and ammunition, their families and hostages, fled the city in a convoy that stretched 2 miles. Coalition forces monitored their progress with drones during the convoy's 3-day drive across the desert before the IS fighters scattered. Getty warnings come as Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi escaped Raqqa with thousands of armed extremist fighters. Plans to attack the group were rejected for fear of injuring hostages. Another factor was insufficient resources to take 4,000 prisoners. Earlier this year, Moscow claimed its forces had killed al-Baghdadi, but in May, Kurdish intelligence reported he was in southern Turkey. In September, a 46-minute audio recording was released which was analyzed by forensic experts who confirmed it was al-Baghdadi's voice on the recording. Last night a U.S. intelligence source confirmed that high-value target al-Baghdadi had been in Raqqa last month and was now at large. Getty armed extremist fighters are believed to have escaped to a secret peace deal 5 weeks ago. A senior British military source in Washington, D.C. added, "We now know there were hundreds of Daesh's commanders who left, with Brits among them. We believe, and there is intelligence to support it, that al-Baghdadi boarded the lorries that were allowed to drive out of Raqqa. The fact is there were very few options: carry on fighting and risk killing hundreds of civilians, send in Western forces to support exhausted Kurdish fighters, or allow them to drive away and monitor them." Despite the monitoring, scattered fighters were able to flee across the border after the convoy dispersed.